Hey everybody, welcome back to Rink's Garage, where today we're going to continue working on the 610 Melrose skid loader that we're attempting to fit a 3-cylinder Kubota into. We got the engine in there, but she was a little tight because of some miscalculations, so we're going to see if we can make her work. Let's get to it. So when we left off last time, we had just got it in there. It's a little tight. Basically, we had to build this pulley to hook up to the existing pulley on there, and we built the motor mount, set her in there, and I miscalculated when I measured the width because I measured under here. Thought, plenty of room. Wrong. I didn't calculate having it up this high due to the oil plug underneath there, because we'd like to be able to change oil. So I'm thinking what we're gonna have to do is pull it back out of there and see if we can get rid of the existing water pump and maybe the thermostat housing, so we can allow this to come over about 2 inches to line up with that pulley in the back. So hopefully I can get it out of there. I know she was a little tight squeeze getting her in there, so get her pulled out and see what we can do. Don't really remember how I got it stuck in there. Oh, there she goes. All right. So basically what we're dealing with here is we need about 2 1/4 inches, which is about the width of this pulley. So my hope was we could pull this water pump off there and plate it so we could gain that, just get rid of this, and then I got a 12-volt electric water pump we could throw on it. Thermostat housing also may be an issue. This was going to get pretty close to these lines, and I thought maybe we could pull that off too and make a new housing. But of course they got the 2 bolts on that housing buried behind this cover, which is the entire front cover of the engine. I do not want to take that off. That's where the water jacket is. So water comes in here, goes through the pump, and gets pumped through the water jacket, and then exits up to the thermostat and out. So I think what we're gonna have to do is pull this cover off, see what it looks like, and see if we can rig something up. Well, now that we got that stuff off, we can pull this housing off. 6 bolts. Try to save the gasket so I don't have to buy one, but we'll see what happens. Oh, now we got a mess. Perfect gasket. Can reuse that for sure. So there's what we got. There's your water jacket entering the engine. Here's our water pump, which is right around 3 3/4 overall. And we need to take off about 2 1/4. So we want to be somewhere in here. So I'm thinking our best bet is we just make a plate to cover this up, and we'll just put our own water inlet in it down low, because the ledge right here is about this high. So if we're below that, right in this area, we can come down and get our pipe on there, kind of like it was before on this. But I don't want to cut this up. I don't know if it's just cast iron housing or what it is, but I'd like to save it just in case we ever do something different. And if we did cut it, we'd have to cut it here and then figure out some way to seal it back up. So I think our best bet is just making a plate. So get some metal and make a plate and get a nipple like this and weld on at an angle so it's tucked in below the ridge there, and maybe it'll work. We're still going to be pretty tight up here, so we might have to do some fancy hydraulic line work. I think like these two are going to be in the way, but I wonder if we can't take this spacer out and get them over closer. See what happens. So also I'm going to have to get some shorter metric bolts, of course. I don't have them, but since our housing ain't going to be this deep, it's only going to be, you know, 3/16 or a quarter. I'll have to get shorter bolts. So I'll have to run town and get them, but see what I can round up for some metal. Well, just got back and picking up some metric bolts, a couple fittings. So first thing we're going to do is have to trace this out on a piece of steel. So I got a piece of steel over here, and we can use our gasket for that. So I'm just going to trace this out, take the plasma cutter and cut it out, and then I just got a steel 90. We'll just drill a hole here in the plate and weld this on, hopefully somewhere where I can still get bolts in. And that should work, I think. So it'll be something like this. Then we'll just put a barb fitting on there for the radiator hose. And as long as I stay below right here, it should end up under this frame. So, and then we'll just remote mount a 12-volt water pump to circulate it. Just come on with the key. So trace that out and get her sawed out with the plasma cutter. Well, got our plate finished up. Just welded a 90 on there. Hopefully she seals. Guess we'll find out. And then I drilled and tapped it for a 3/8 barb thread so we can hook that up to below our thermostat. Not sure if it's going to work the same. Water pump had one up here that went to the inside of the impellers to kind of circulate the water before the thermostat opens up. Of course, this one's going to have a remote pump over here, so it's going to be putting pressure both ways. So Not sure if that's going to work, but nothing else. We just take the thermostat out and let it fully circulate the whole time. But, so that'll fit on there just like that. And then we can put our barb fitting in here for the radiator hose. So, now, throw a coat of paint on her. Let her dry, and while we're doing that, there's one other thing I want to do before we slap this back in there. And that is throw a new belt on it. This one got kind of ripped up and the cover come off. So I picked up a new one. And in order to change that, we need to take this block apart, and this is 2 separate shafts. So you take each half of this shaft, this block off, and then the shafts can tip each way and you can slide the belt through. I've never done it before, so see if I can do it without knocking the chain off in here. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but each of them shafts runs out to a chain that drives the skid loader, so pop them bolts out and see what we can screw up. So I got the 1/2 off and this one is stuck. I don't know what's gonna happen here, but I'll tap her off there. Oops. All right, so it's just got a keyway on each side, and then that other half has a keyway in it. But now I think we can slip the belt through there, so I'll see if I can get this one off. Stick a new one on. That. Now we should just have to put that back up on the bottom, that on top, tighten the bolts down. I'll probably take the old wire wheel and clean them up a little bit so go back on a little easier, but not too bad actually. So the chain is just kind of holding them now, so we don't want to jerk around on them too much, but I'll get her thrown back on there and then we can set this thing in and see if it's going to fit. Well, slammed her back in there. Kind of fits. See, that's where the water pump was. We got very little room touching the old thermostat housing, but that's just that piece of wood holding the hydraulic lines, so I think it'll be all right. Got the belt lined up with my eyeball, so hopefully that doesn't jump off, but had a slight miscalculation with the length of the belt. She's a little short of my holes. So when I built it, I had it centered on here, not thinking that's where the old one would have been. Of course, that would have had the pulley, secondary pulley pulled all the way tight for high speed, and then on low speed, this pulley would have widened out and let the belt go forward. So I think I got it 3/4 speed, maybe, kind of where I want it. I don't want it full speed, so you got to try and dig in the dirt or something. Run out of power, so I think that's where we're gonna go with it. So what I come up with for the mounts was another piece of angle iron. Drilled the holes in there. So we'll bolt that on and tack around that piece, and I need something to put brackets on for my hydraulic motor here to run the hydraulics on the skid loader. So do that there. As you can see, that hole's in a horrible spot, but weld a piece of flat metal in there with a hole to catch that one. And the other one's way underneath there. Not sure what I'm going to do with that one yet. Do we need it? Probably not. But we'll see. Had to break out the barley pops to think about it. So we'll get this tacked on and get a piece welded in there so we can bolt her down, and then it'll be time to, I don't know, maybe see if the motor runs. Probably should have done that first. But I'll get her welded up and we'll go from there. Well, I realized one thing. I'm glad I'm keeping this skid loader for me because the quality's not there. Got our pieces welded on. Random piece welded under there. Here's a closer look at that plate I made. I know I said I was going to plasma cut it out, but then I decided I didn't want to deal with the smoke. So, use the jigsaw. But hopefully she doesn't leak. That wouldn't be good. But we got all our holes there, so I think we can slide her back in for third time. Something like that. I'm sure it'll be about 7 more. But get her in there. Oh, one other thing. When I took this apart, I put all the parts I took out in a coffee can. Think I could find the damn thing? No. Missing the 2 plates that slide under here that are tapped, so I can put them 2 bolts in. So I'm gonna have to go searching for that too. But we'll get her stuck back in, bolted down, and then we'll see about getting some battery cables and see if the thing will run. I gotta go searching. Well, we got her shoved back in there. She's tight fit, but that piece of wood holding the lines away from the thermostat housing up there's touching, but there's not a lot of tension on it. Got 3 bolts in. I was able to stick a nut under there with a stubby wrench and get that one tightened down. Got these 2. The one in the far back is going to be tough. I couldn't find them pieces anywhere. I don't know what I did with them, but belt alignment appears to be okay. We'll see when we fire it up if it jumps off. We do have all kinds of room in here, so that's good. Able to get at the radiator hose pretty decent. Everything kind of sits pretty good, so got room to get our hydraulic hoses on when we get that far. But it's getting pretty late, so I think I'm gonna call it for tonight. But tomorrow morning, see if we can get some diesel fuel hooked up, a couple battery cables, toggle switch on the fuel shut off. See if it runs. Hopefully it's a good motor. The guy who got it from said he had it running, so see what happens, I guess. Well, back at her the next day. Ran into town, picked up some supplies. So we got a fuel pump, some battery cables, some wiring, push button starter switch, and a toggle switch. So basically what we gotta do to get this thing running, of course we need fuel. We need fuel shut off switch, starter button, so we'll get a battery mounted up here and I'll run the cable to the starter and then at ground. And I'll probably rewire this key box with my push button and stuff. So one other thing we're going to need is a fuel return, being with the diesel. And of course our fuel tank only has 1 suction line, so I'll have to figure something out for that. And we got to get the old gas out of here because she's probably got 3-year-old gas in it. So we'll have to try and suck all that out of there and then put a bunch of diesel in to blend off what's left in there. So, but first thing I think I'm going to do is get started on the wiring. So find a spot for our fuel pump. Get the battery cables hooked up and routed up here. Wire in our switches. Oh yeah, and we got to put an exhaust pipe on, which I was out to Dad's and I picked up a couple random pieces of pipe and a muffler. So see if we can make it work. But get started. I'm going to run them battery cables and then we'll go about wiring up the toggle switch and the push button. So I pulled this little console box off and I'm just going to pull this switch out and this light. So we got room for a push button start, power switch, so that'll turn power on to the fuel pump and the fuel shut off. And we'll keep the amp gauge hooked up to the alternator, but basically I just got to run 3 2-wires out of here. Put these switches in. We can bolt her back on and route our wires through. Start connecting them to the motor. Alright, we got some stuff wired up. Got our main toggle switch, got a 2-wire running out of that, in and out. So one will have to get hooked to the battery and then the other one can go for the fuel pump and the fuel shut off. We got the push button, 2-wire on that. So that'll go power and to the solenoid to start it. And I had this extra hole because these two holes were too big for the toggle switch. So I had a little LED light, so I just put that on the switch. So we'll have a power light when that toggle switch is on. And then I got another 2-wire running for the amp gauge. So we can hook up that to the alternator to make sure we're charging when we get that far. But next thing, oh, and I threw the 2 battery cables on, got it on the hot post on the solenoid and a good ground. That'll come up here and go to the battery. So now I got this fancy terminal block. I'm gonna stick him on right here so we can route some power in and out of stuff, so we can run one main power onto this, and then from that toggle switch, and then we can go out to our fuel pump and to our fuel solenoid. And I'll see if I can round up a fuse to put in the fuel pump line so we don't melt her down. But we'll get that wiring in, and then I think we can throw a battery in and see if it's going to crank over. And then it'll be on to fuel and probably a muffler. See what happens. Well, we got her somewhat wired up. Got my terminal strips in. We got a 30 amp fuse on the power going up to the toggle switch. So if anything happens, it should kill that. Got my quick removal clamp in case something goes wrong, shorts out. But we got the 2-wire running back here, also hooked to that toggle switch. So this will run the fuel shutoff and the fuel pump. But if I did it correctly, we should be able to crank it. So we just flip the toggle on. Ooh, she must have a little fuel in the injector still. Cranks. So now we need fuel. In order to get fuel, I could run it out of just a jug on the floor, but might as well do it now while I got this pump hooked up. So we'll find a location for our fuel pump, and that will hook up into here to suck out. And I think what I'll do is I'll hook it up and then just throw a hose on it into a bucket and see if we can pump the gas out of there, and then just put diesel in the tank. I got 8 gallons of diesel to dump in there, so I will get that pump set up and see if we can pump her out of there. All right, well done little plate for our fuel pump. So I got that mounted, got her plumbed into the tank with the old line. That will replace that once we get her all drained out. And then I just got the other end running in this bucket. So got a little 12-volt Milwaukee here, just plug the pump in for now, so we should get pump action when we plug this in. See if she'll time herself up or not. Oh, there she goes. So, let's see how much we get out of there. Hopefully, I don't know if there's more than 5 gallons in there or not. We'll find out. If there is, we'll have to properly dispose of this gas. It smells pretty varnishy. It's 3 years old. So, but before we do fire it up, I think I'm going to get a muffler on it so we're not blowing smoke straight out of there. So when I was out to Dad's, he had an old muffler laying there off the tractor or something, and I grabbed some random pipes. So I'll have to build a little flange to bolt on there, just a 4-bolt flange, pipe up, and then I think I'll just run out here with the exhaust for now. So if we got to turn it later, we can. So, but we'll let this thing pump till she gets empty. Then I'll change out all them lines, get a muffler on it, and then I think we'll be able to see if she'll fire up. So see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't take off and run into the wall or something. Well, looks like there was only about 2.5 gallons in there. She went dry, so I don't know if you can see in there, but it actually pumped her right down to the bottom. So I'm gonna probably throw a 1/2 gallon of diesel in it, pump that out just to flush out the system, and we'll get rid of that nasty gas, get a muffler on it, and then I'll wire up this. I got my 2-wire from that toggle switch back here, so we'll tee him into this fuel pump and the fuel shut off. So when you flip that on, it opens up the fuel and turns the pump on. Fire in the hole. Something is wrong. All right, let's try this again. Jump pack. Well, I think I found a problem. Turns out this fuel shut off works opposite of what I thought. I popped her off there, and actually with power to it, the pin is out, pushing on the rack, shutting the injectors off. So I cut the ground wire. Now she should fire up. Just wasn't getting any fuel. Let's give her a shot. Well, there you go. Stuff works a lot better when it's hooked up correctly. So evidently that would have been hooked up to like a seat switch or just a toggle switch. So we put power to it, it shuts the engine off. So I was putting power to it with the toggle switch, so that's why it wasn't pumping any diesel. But glad she runs. That's good. Looked like the belt tracked pretty decent, so didn't jump off. Another plus. So what we got left is, of course, we need to hook our intake up to the filter. Get an exhaust clamp because that was leaking real bad. We need a radiator. Some radiator hoses. I'm thinking I'll probably mount the radiator back here somewhere. And hydraulics. I got a hydraulic pump. Got from my dad. I don't know what it's off of, if it'll work or not. I don't know. We'll try it. Hoping to run that off this front pulley up here. What else? It's getting down there, but moves under its own power. First time it's done that in 3 years, so that's good. Suppose we need a seat and a throttle cable. And I'll probably get 2 cables and hook one up to this manual shutdown too. So, but that's gonna do her for this video. We got her running. One more video and we should have her ready to scoop snow, which is probably coming here in a week. So better get her done. We'll see you next time.